With minimal cap space and plenty of room on this roster for this Boston Bruins team to have to fill out, they are going to have a hell of an offseason ahead of them. Who do they trade? Who can they sign? Who can they bring back? And what does this roster shape out to be next year? Can they be as competitive as they were this season? We're breaking it all down in today's video. Welcome back to another edition of the Edgework off-season series. Today, we're thinking, hey, you know, we got to find some teams where we could have some fun with these rosters. We can make some big moves. And then it popped up across the Twitter timeline as people are preparing to get ready for July 1st. The Boston Bruins, they need some players to fill out this roster, and they've got about zero cap space. Currently looking at $4.937 million of cap space heading into next season. So myself, Alex Moretto here, we will break down the Boston Bruins' entire offseason plan, what they could potentially do, or what we think might be interesting for them to do going into next year. But before we get into that video, I want to remind people here to make sure to like and subscribe here to the Edgework HQ YouTube channel. If you enjoyed the series as well, you can hit that notifications button so you get notified every time new videos just like this one come out here on this channel. And as well, we do want to thank our sponsor, Pinnacle. Pinnacle is the world's sharpest sportsbook and available to bettors in Ontario. You can find out what professional bettors have known for decades. Pinnacle is where the best bettors play. You must be 19 plus in Ontario. Please play responsibly. It is not available currently in the US. But Moretto, let's get into it here. $4.937 million in cap space for the Boston Bruins. You're looking at some big holes down the middle. You have no additional depth there. You got no backup goaltender at the current moment in time. How do you go about opening up some cap space for this Bruins team?
This is tough. Like you have to fill out an entire roster, and you basically have no room to do it. So like they're gonna have to get pretty creative, I think. And I had a very tough time trying to map this out. Like this took me a lot longer than it did for some of the other teams we've done, where I was just sort of like, man, like how do you, like you do a few moves, you're like, okay, I got space now. You're like, no, that's still not enough to sign the amount of players I have to sign. So yeah, Sweeney's going to have to get pretty creative here. I started off with a blockbuster. Is what I did because, and I can explain this move and the kind of the logic behind it, but I went to Detroit to make this trade. I thought Detroit makes sense. It's a team with cap space and a team that has sort of needs up front and in net. And I dealt them Taylor Hall and Jeremy Swayman. You know, Hall, you can get that $6 million off the books. He's got a modified no trade clause, a 10-team no trade list, I believe. I don't think Detroit would be on that list if he were to submit one. I can't imagine they would. That's, you know, a pretty nice market to play in. He stays on the East Coast. So, yeah, I think that's very doable. And obviously Swayman being a guy they could use in net, getting a young goaltender to pair with Husso, who wasn't exactly great. They need an answer in net. Maybe Swayman is the guy. And as an RFA, the Bruins just can't afford to bring him. I don't see how they can afford to bring him back with what he'll probably command and you know, with so many other holes to fill. So I think you're going to have to move on from him logically. Now this isn't just a pure cap dump. So you're not going to get nothing back from the Wings either, right? You're going to get like something of a return here. It's not like some of the other, you know, deals we've maybe talked about or seen. So in this case, you know, maybe it's not enough. Maybe it's too much. You know, people can say how they feel about this in the comments.
Well, let us know in the comments. Yeah,
I'm sure they'll let us know. In, you know, maybe not so nice terms. But I added here Jonathan Bergeron, their former second round pick, who had a pretty nice rookie season. Jonathan.
Yeah. And
a couple draft picks, so a second and a third.
All right, are we looking 2023 here for these draft picks that we're adding in? I mean, it kind of depends on what the team specifically is looking for, but in your scenario here, what were you throwing in?
Yeah, I did a second from the St. Louis's second from this year. The Wings obviously have an abundance of picks, right? So I did and then their own third round pick, the Wings' own third round pick.
Okay. So there you go. So that is the first trade that you're making here, clearing a bunch of cap space with this one. Taylor Hall out, Jeremy Swayman, the rights to Jeremy Swayman, that is, out here. You bring back Jonathan Bergeron, brings in $925K, so you save effectively $5 million in cap space here on this deal. You're also bringing back to Boston 2 draft picks, a 2023 second, which belonged to St. Louis, and a 2023 third round pick. So we're going to submit this one. This is our first trade. Off and approved. There you go. That's first deal in the books. So now you're currently looking still at a roster size of 15 players, but now you are up to $10 million in cap space. Where's the next place you go?
Yeah, so we still need to clear more room here. There's going to be a lot of clearing that needs to happen. Like this is so now I'm gonna pivot over. I've seen talk about they need to try and trade Hall, or they need to try and trade DeBrusk. They need to try and trade one of them. I think you might have to trade both. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to ship out DeBrusk, who is a good young player and who, unfortunately, I just don't think they can keep. And again, you're going to get a decent return from him. It's not like a pure cap dump where you're, a team is taking on a bad contract. It's a pretty good contract considering what how he produced this year. So I'm going to ship DeBrusk over to the Predators. I think a decent landing spot for him there. And I'm going to bring back Yakov Trenin, who is under team control at a lower average and a third round pick.
Okay, so we're going to send over DeBrusk, who is currently on a $4 million AAV contract, and we're bringing back Trenin here in the deal from Nashville, as well as a 2023 third round pick here. There's 3 options from Nashville. Do you have a preference? We're currently looking at a San Jose, a Tampa, and a Predators third round pick for 2023. Is there one you're eyeing more than the other ones?
Let's take the middle of the pack one, the Preds one.
Okay, sounds good. So throw that in. Now, this will be a change in cap space for the Bruins of $2.3 million. So submit this trade. And now we are currently sitting still 15 players on the roster. But now we are up to $12 million in cap space. So you're basically just cycling through roster size, staying equal. But we've now opened from 4.97 up to 12.3. Are you still trying to clear out some roster space here, Alex?
A little bit more. And in an ideal world, you can trade this guy, but I don't know that the market is going to be huge for him. It might be because just the bad defensive class in the UFA market this year. But again, Mike Riley, coming off a year where he basically was buried in the AHL, and he's making $3 million. I don't think that's a guy you can pay $3 million this year if you want to fill out the roster properly. So we are going to go ahead and buy him out.
Okay, sounds good. So the next move that we're going to make, we're just going to buy out Mike Riley, which gives us the opportunity here to take $3 million off the book. But that does get it down to, it would effectively be $333,000 for this coming season that he's going to hit us for. So that does free it up, though, at least to $14.979. So almost $15 million. But your roster size has now shrunk down to 14. You've lost a player off the roster. Where do you go from here?
So now it's about trying to fill out this roster. Now we're like, okay, we've cleared as much space as we probably can. So now let's try and round this out. So I'm going to start in the RFA market and bring back Trent Frederick. I think he's a good player who's going to command maybe a little bit more than they could have afforded if they didn't have these moves to clear out some space. Now you can kind of bring him back. Let's say they can agree to something of a longer term with him. Maybe if they can get a longer term, they can get that average down a little bit. So let's go $2 million average over 4 years.
Okay, so $2 million for 4 years. Trent Frederick as an RFA. First one, bring him back. Are there any other RFAs on this list here for the Bruins that you're currently looking at trying to bring back as well?
No, that's it.
That is it for the RFAs for the Bruins. So as it shapes out now, 15 roster size of 15, and 12.97. Now we're down to of cap space. What's next here?
So this is sort of like an ideal situation, obviously, and it's very much up in the air as to what's going to happen. But we're going to bring back Patrice Bergeron for one more kick at the can here after it did not end the way he wanted it to last year. Maybe, Sweeney and the guys can convince him to come back for one more season. He's obviously got plenty left in the tank. I think it's a lot more likely they can convince him to come back for another year than Krejci. So
yeah,
let's bring him back. I know he made 2.5 last year. To keep this a little realistic, let's say like 1 year, $4 million.
You think he goes up in salary going if he's going to come back?
I mean, based on the season he had last year, like I can see him going for the same amount. But like again, I'm trying to keep a little bit of realism here, and like it just seems like so idealistic to bring him back for another $2.5 million at 1 year.
I'll give you counterpoint on this one.
Yeah,
he's 37 years old. He's dealt with some injury. There may be possibility here that they give him a little bit of load management throughout the season, so he's not going to play back 82 games. And he could prioritize the idea of, hey, let's go for playoff success. They obviously had the incredible season they had last year. I don't think anyone there is going to try to say, hey, we got to replicate this. He, even in his mind, could just be like, let me just get through the regular season and we try to win the cup and let's focus on that. So maybe he does take that little bit less. I'm just throwing out the counterpoint of this where he might say, hey, I'll take a little bit less. Just don't run me out there he played 81 games last year in the regular season. So he might just tone that down a bit. That's just counterpoint of that side. But that's kind of where I was at. We're looking at the contract of it.
All right, let's. I mean, hey, look, I'm not going to argue with you. If you're going to give me a little bit more flexibility here, I'll take a little bit more flexibility. So let's go 1 year and 2.5 again.
All right, so go 1 year, 2.5 for Patrice Bergeron. Now currently sitting at $10.4 million of cap space, roster size of 16. You've at least got 2 centers here now. What else have we got to try to fill out? Our defense, for the most part, by the way, is pretty much filled out unless you're going to make any trades or changes there in that sense. So we're looking looking more towards forwards. But where's the next place that you're going to add to this Bruins team next season?
Yeah, we can just round out the defense and goalie right now just to make sure we know exactly what we're working with up front. I'll bring in one depth guy because you're going to want to obviously 7 defensemen. Maybe Zaboral's that 7th guy. Maybe not, but we'll bring in Troy Stecher on a short, low deal here. Let's say 2 years, 1.25 average.
Okay. So Troy Stecher, 29 years old. He played 81 games last year. He was moved from Arizona to Calgary, I believe. That was the move at the trade deadline. And he was at 1.25 as well last year, so effectively just running that back for him. So bringing another depth piece on defense for this Bruins team. So we do have a position open at backup goaltender here in Boston next season. Who's the one that you're looking to fill that spot?
Let's go with maybe like a James Reimer or a Martin Jones. I think either of those guys would kind of make sense at a 1 or 2 year deal at around 1.5.
Do you have a preference on Optimus Rhyme?
Let's bring Optimus Rhyme in and just to terrorize the Leafs a couple times.
Wouldn't that be something if Optimus Rhyme comes into Toronto and beats the Leafs in a playoff series? That would just kill people. So
Allmark goes down again. Reimer comes in, beats the Leafs in the round 1. That would be wild.
And you wanted 1.5 for Reimer here?
Yeah.
All right. So there you go. 2 goalies. Done, locked in. Roster size currently sitting at 18. $7.729 million cap space currently available. You're basically still looking for 2 more centers and a right winger. How do you kind of utilize this remaining cap space to fill out this roster and continue to maybe add some depth here?
So that cap space is a tad misleading because we're going to need about 5 more guys to round out this roster, right? We're going to want a roster size of 23 to fill this cap. So
yes,
let's bring 2 guys up from the AHL first in order to do that, in order to fill out this depth spot. So let's go Fabian Lysell. Let's get him up there. He had a very nice debut season with Providence last year. The former first-round pick in 2021, he had 37 points in 54 games. Let's give him a chance. I think, honestly, this is a guy who will even have a chance to contribute in a middle six role, maybe, as midway through this season. And then at center, let's bring up John Beecher, another former first-round pick, 2021. He's kind of an ideal sort of depth piece, a big body who can easily fill in that fourth center role or be, one of those extra forwards. Not the most offensive output, but a solid player.
Okay. So you brought up your two players from the minors, roster size 20, now kind of still looking at that. Hey, three more guys, $5.94 million of cap space.
All right. So I want to go and bring back a guy who was on the team last year, was brought onto the team midway through the season and had a solid impact in Garnet Hathaway.
And what would you be looking to sign him at? 31 years old. He played, says 91 games last year, 13 goals, 10 assists. Where are you at with Garnet Hathaway, like a more depth piece here?
Yeah, so Evolving Hockey has him at a predicted cap hit of 2.27 and a predicted term of 3 years. I think that's too high, considering his output, his age, everything. I don't see that. So, maybe we can give him the term to get him to agree to a lower average, but, I'll still give him the 3 years. But I'm going to say it around 2 at most. I think even 1.75 is fine. But for the sake of this, let's go with 2.
Okay, $2 million, 3 years for Garnet Hathaway. Locked in, down to 3.94. Getting tight. 2 more spots available. Who takes them and how much money?
All right, so next up, I'm going to bolster the team on the wings, and I'm going to bring in a guy who really fits, I think, the Bruins mold, a guy who played at Boston College back before his NHL days, a guy from New York who might, be willing to take a $3 million deal, maybe a little bit lower than what's projected out there, to play in Boston next season and have a chance to win a cup, and that guy is Miles Wood. I think you can convince him to come over there. I think he really fits what the Bruins are doing. He really fits that team. I think you can, if you can offer him even some term here, maybe $3 million a year for 5 years. He's coming off a bit of a down season. Production wasn't that high. Didn't have a great playoffs by any means. Didn't produce much, and also was taking a lot of penalties. I think maybe that would make sense. I think that for the team and player, obviously the average just isn't that high, but I still think that that's a pretty fair deal for both parties.
Yeah, I would agree here. I think that this, based on where he dropped down from his level of play last year, and then you're going to basically put him in a spot where you can give him some term, that extra little cushion on top of that, I think it could allow him to have a little bit more interest in signing there. So we add on Miles Wood. Now we kind of are looking at one more roster spot. We got about $940,000 in cap space. I gave you that extra room on the Patrice Bergeron deal, and we're using every penny of it. Who's taking up the final little piece of cap space here for the Bruins next season?
Let's bring back a guy to Boston who was just here last year in Thomas Nosek. I think a guy who really fills that 4C role really well, and I think you can convince him to come back on a 1 or 2 year deal at a little bit under $950, maybe $925. I think that's a pretty fair deal given his production and just being able to keep him in Boston.
So we'll go 2 year deal on that, $925. Honestly, this may be a situation where you have to go 1 year on it if he's going to go to the $925 and say, hey, maybe this is a prove it year kind of thing. And then, maybe you can get your money after. But based on what we were talking about with the production, hey, you got your opportunity in Boston last year. We're going to give you another one to come back. I would say 1 year, $925 is appropriate. Okay, so now we're currently sitting at a roster size of 23. We've got about $15,000 in cap space available. Let's go through the roster and quickly build out the lines the way that we were looking at how these things might play out next year. So pulling it up here, just going through the forwards. You got the defense pretty much built out. The goaltenders, fairly obvious situation there. How do you build out the forward lines?
So I think at center here we're going to go, Bergeron, Zack, Coyle, and then Nosek as the 4C. I think that's a decent center depth chart. Hopefully Zack can continue to fill that role at center. And then we'll have Marchand, Marchand and Pasternak first line. Then we'll go maybe Hathaway and Trennan on the second line there, and then we'll go Frederick. Let's get Frederick over to right wing, and Wood will play third line left. So Coyle, Wood, and Frederick, and then let's go Lysell, Noshik, and Bergeron as the third line.
Okay, so then we're gonna have Lysell on the right wing, Noshik at center, and Bergeron on the left, and then you currently have John Beecher and AJ Greer as your extras going into next season. So that pretty much builds out where you're at for the Boston Bruins heading into next season. We maxed out the roster size, made some big moves here. Just to quickly recap, you're looking at a Taylor Hall, Jeremy Swayman trade to the Detroit Red Wings. You get back Jonathan Bergeron, a second-round pick in 2023 from St. Louis, a third-round pick in 2023 that was Detroit's. And then the next move that we made here was Jake DeBrusk. You move out his $4 million. You bring back Yakov Trenin and a third-round pick from the Nashville Predators. And then we go on to sign our free agents and our restricted free agents. The only RFA bringing back here, at least for the big club, is Trent Frederick. We're not necessarily worried about the minor league deals there. So as far as that goes, that will complete this Boston Bruins offseason plan and predictions. Let us know in the comments your thoughts about how you feel about the trades that we made, the signings, the RFAs, the lineup build out, all that kind of stuff. Let us know in the comments. Even let us know your thoughts on the contracts that were signed, how much they were signed for, the term that was signed. We want to hear all of that below. And as well, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications here on the Edgework HQ YouTube channels. We're going to have plenty more videos like this coming out leading up to free agency, and you're not going to want to miss those, because you can at least, even if you disagree with us, you can come here and let us know how ridiculous some of the takes are that we're giving out. We're happy to hear them. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Alex, thanks for taking the time to do this. Look forward to seeing everyone soon. Enjoy your summers.